Hi guys, this is Earth Day. We are super happy to welcome you to our discussion on sustainability today, in sync with the US president taking the initiative to invite world leaders to a big climate summit. This is symbolically actually really strong for us at Air France-KLM. Airline people are not a different breed. We all want a better place to live in and to leave to our kids. And it is kind of obvious that the world is in a better shape when people are connected to each other, when they meet, know, and respect each other. And this is our business to support that, to travel. So we are deeply committed. This is not a light word. This is not for granted to renew a fleet and to replace four engines aircraft by new, more efficient ones. It's about hundreds of $1 million investments. And we've been doing that actually for a long time already. Back 10 years ago, Air France-KLM were among the first to operate commercial flights with sustainable aviation fuels, demonstrating back then a possible alternative to fossil fuels. As a consequence, our group has been on top of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for 16 years in a row. So today, we are going to see that not only we have done a lot, but we are planning even much more, because the urgency, the limit to limit carbon dioxide emissions in particular is always bigger. Joining us today are some of the people within Air France-KLM that are shepherding our current and future efforts on this front. Vincent Etchebehere, Head of Sustainability and New Mobilities at Air France. Karel Bockstael, Head of Sustainability for KLM. Marion Chivot will be here today too, based in Canada, in charge of sustainability actions for North America. And Stacy and Carla Camargo, who set this event up and will coordinate it for us today. Without further ado, Carla, the floor is yours.
I was on mute. Sorry, guys. So I just want to welcome everyone. My name is Carla. I'll be the moderator of the event. And I just want to introduce a couple of features to the audience. So to the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a chat area as well as a poll feature. So we encourage everyone to enter in any questions they might have for our panel speakers. We have a whole team facilitating that chat behind the scenes. So take advantage for sure and submit your questions in there, and we will do our very best to get to all of them. So let's take a look actually at the first poll question that should have appeared to the right-hand side of your screen. Let's see here. Let's see if technology is on my side today. So I don't quite see the results of our poll question. Let me see. We don't have those results ready just yet. So hopefully stay tuned later and then we'll get those results up on screen. I'm going to throw it over to Vincent right now, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about what sustainability means to Air France-KLM. Vincent?
Thank you, Carla. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you today. So I will start while explaining a little bit the mission of Air France-KLM when it comes to sustainability. What does it mean for us as a company, as sustainability offices? And also provide you with some elements of our commitment and concrete actions. So sustainability for Air France-KLM, I would say, is all around taking and endorsing responsibility about our environmental impact, about our carbon footprint, and acting as much and as fast as we can in order to reduce it drastically. It's also taking responsibility towards our customers, our staff, and maybe especially through the crisis which we are all living in right now, ensuring their safety and trying also to contribute to the fight against this virus. And also bringing and driving all the societal benefits of aviation, which Stephane was mentioning during its introduction, in terms of connecting people, connecting cultures, connecting economies, And actually, the best way to bring those benefits still to the next generation and make sure that they can benefit from them is, again, to tackle our climate urgency and our responsibility in this field. So actually, sustainability, as you know, is a journey. It's all around transition. It's a journey that started quite long ago for Air France-KLM. For example, Air France was member of the UN Global Impact back in 2003. From this commitment on, we achieved some results, some good results. To give you one number, between 2005 and 2019, we are able as Air France-KLM to reduce our CO2 per passenger kilometer by 30%, which is an achievement. We want to go yet much further. We have the objective by 2030 to reduce the same indicator to minus 50%. And we want to do more. We want and we have to do more in order, once again, to face the climate urgency that is in front of us. I would end this small introduction by sharing two convictions with you, which I think at the core of what we do, what we try to do when it comes to sustainability. First, in order to face this climate urgency, our industry has to transform. We have basically to rethink the way we fly. That's one. And second is that we cannot do it alone. We cannot overcome this challenge alone as airlines. We need the support and we need the collaboration of aircraft manufacturers, of fuel producers, of corporate customers, individual customers, travel agencies, partners. And it's only by bonding forces that we can overcome the great challenge and crucial challenge that we have in front of us. And in order to show you how we want to mobilize all the stakeholders of our ecosystem, we have a short video that we wanted to share with you.
Air France and the Solar Impulse Foundation are partnering for a sustainable and clean aviation industry, looking together for innovations that make a difference. The purpose of the Solar Impulse Foundation is to select and promote 1,000 solutions to protect the environment in all areas. Through this partnership with Air France, the search for innovation in the aviation industry will focus on 4 main areas: CO2 emissions, energy efficiency, noise, and the circular economy. Innovations are examined by experts, and those that prove both their ecological benefit and their economic viability will be awarded the Solar Impulse Foundation label.
When I initiated the Solar Impulse project, almost everybody told me it was impossible to fly around the world on solar power. Today, most of the people think that it's impossible to have a clean commercial aviation. Well, this is exactly the challenge we have decided to launch together, Air France and the Solar Impulse Foundation. So we are now calling innovators for solutions, and all these solutions will be assessed by experts and might be implemented by Air France. So it's a chance for you. And it's also a fantastic challenge for the world, because aviation is showing the leadership, is showing that innovation can make a better world. It has done in the past, we have to continue.
At Air France, our ambition is to offer everyone, both current and future generations, a responsible travel experience. This is why we are committed on a daily basis to taking concrete measures. For the love of travel, we are rethinking the way we fly the world.
Thank you so much, Vincent. And I'm going to throw it off to Karel, who's actually in Amsterdam. Thank you so much for joining us all the way across the pond. Karel, what would you say is at stake for our industry if we don't continue making advancements as we are year after year in flying more sustainably?
Thanks, Carla, for that question. Good evening, everyone. Today is Earth Day. We're celebrating the beauty of Earth, and it also brings us to the point that we have to realize that we have to take care of our planet. So that's the theme of this world, and it's aviation is enabling traveling our beautiful planet. and showing people the best places of our planet. And that privilege comes with a responsibility. And that responsibility is about taking care of the people who work for in our supply chain and in our company, of the communities and of the environment. Coming back to your question, Carla, the impact of aviation currently for the climate, if we look at climate only, is that aviation globally has 2 to 3% of the CO2 emissions worldwide. And that's not really a big number. But the issue is that the other sectors like automotive and power supply are decreasing their emissions very rapidly, and that aviation is still looking for solutions while the industry is also growing at the same time. And if we do not come into action, then in 2050, the majority of the CO2 emissions, or at least a large part of all CO2 emissions, are from aviation. So we have to move in as industry. That's why in 2019, KLM launched the Fly Responsibly campaign. And the Fly Responsibly campaign was a bit unusual because we were asking people to think twice before booking a ticket. And we were also inviting the industry to work together on sustainability, because it's one planet and one industry that should take responsibility. Now, as Vincent already showed, our emissions have decreased in the last decades, decreased in absolute sense and surely per passenger kilometer. And we've done that by replacing our fleets, investing in fleet. For example, if you replace a 747 with a 787, you save about 30% per passenger kilometer. And every generation brings 20 to 30%. But we've also discovered good flight paths with our pilots. We have our engineers who are saved weight of aircraft and who are cleaning engines for better combustion. And of course, very important, we have been a pioneer at KLM with biofuel. Biofuel is already more than a decade ago introduced in our fleet. And currently we are still on a small percentage, but it will grow, and we will mention that later on. We are on our way to zero emissions in the long run. It will take time and effort. And in the meantime, we can contribute by helping other sectors to reduce their CO2. And that's what we call CO2 compensation. As long as we cannot reduce ourselves, we can help other sectors to reduce. And there's a little movie about that that's coming up.
Air France is committed on a daily basis to reducing its environmental footprint and offering its customers a responsible travel experience. Reducing its CO2 emissions is an essential lever made possible by introducing more modern and significantly more fuel-efficient aircraft, stepping up the use of sustainable alternative fuels, and eco-piloting. However, residual emissions subsist, and pending the development of new technologies, we can offset the emissions that we can't yet reduce. CO2 offsetting is thus a secondary way to reduce our environmental footprint by financing projects that allow us to avoid the production or store elsewhere an equivalent volume of CO2. Beyond the regulatory obligations, Air France has been proactively offsetting the CO2 emissions generated by its domestic flights in metropolitan France since January 1st, 2020. This contribution takes the form of a participation in reforestation projects, actions to protect forests, biodiversity, or renewable energies, all certified by the strictest international standards. Customers can also contribute individually by opting for voluntary compensation on their non-domestic flights. Air France-KLM offers its corporate customers schemes to offset their emissions from their trips via major certified reforestation projects. And individual customers also have access to the Trip and Tree tree planting program during the reservation process.
Air France innove en investissant dans l'aviation du futur, en travaillant sur les agrocarburants. Air France est une des premières sociétés à financer des projets du label bas carbone sur le territoire national et dans les dom-toms, en particulier des projets de mangroves. Elle s'appuie sur des projets qui sont certifiés et donc qui suivent les bonnes pratiques de la compensation volontaire. Selon nous, cette démarche est complètement cohérente puisqu'on a les trois triptyques: évaluer, réduire massivement et compenser.
Because we love travel, we are rethinking the way we fly the world.
Hi, me again. So we've seen a couple of great examples in our videos about what Air France and KLM is doing as far as making advancements in sustainability. Let's see if we have any questions from our audience. Oh, Brian, here we go. Brian Anderson asks, what are some of the recent sustainable innovations at AFKL? Who wants to take this one?
I can take it. Great question. Thank you, Brian. Well, basically, and to put things in perspectives as well in terms of order of magnitude of the impact of those innovations, and a bit as Karel was explaining, we have really three levers or three objectives when it comes to sustainability and especially decarbonization. The first lever, which we have been using in the past year, so it's not recent in itself, but it's a very important one, is the fleet renewal. Today, for Air France, for KLM, and for any airline in the world, this is actually the most efficient way in the current state of our technologies in order to reduce our CO2 emissions. Because as Karel was saying, every new flight, every new airplane that enters in our fleet enables between 25 and 30% reduction to versus the airplane that it is replacing. So not really new, but still the most efficient. We are also on top of that applying some operational measures which will decrease the consumption of fuel and by then also decrease the emissions of CO2 in the atmosphere. And on this part, we have been recently launching some partnerships with some startups in order to optimize the flight trajectory of our planes, but also in order to provide tools based on artificial intelligence to our pilots so that they can really monitor their fuel consumption, their CO2 emissions, and every time try to improve and reduce as much as possible. So that's for our biggest priority, which is to reduce immediately and as much as we can our emissions. Then a very key and innovative actions is really to replace fossil fuels by sustainable aviation fuels, answering the most demanding sustainability criteria. Why is it such an important pillar in our strategy? It's because sustainable aviation fuels will enable you to decrease your CO2 emissions on the full life cycle of the fuel by 75% to more than 95%. So you see that in terms of impact, it's even much bigger than fleet renewal. And on this one, I don't want to spoil what is coming up, so I will not depict it further. But those are, I would say, the most, those are where our efforts are most concentrated in terms of recent actions.
Thank you so much, Vincent. Hopefully that answers Brian's question. And actually, I have the poll results from earlier. And funny enough, the audience does agree that sustainability to an airline, 44% of you thinks that means reduction in CO2 emissions, and 35% believes that sustainability for an airline means investing in greener aircrafts. So we are happy to say we are on the correct path. Let's see if we have any more questions from the audience. Perhaps one more. Tina, how are you? Tina De Leon, does AFKL have anything embedded in aircraft cockpits that allows pilots to receive real-time alerts during the flight to improve their navigation as other carriers do? This would allow to save 2 to 5% more fuel. Who wants to take this one? Perhaps Karel?
Well, yes, I'm not a regular visitor of cockpits of KLM, but I do know that we have flight guidance from our operational control center to pilots all the time. So all the weather situations and the favorable wind shifts in the upper atmosphere are being monitored in our operational control center. And there's a continuous optimization, sorry. There's a continuous optimization of the flight routes that being calculated on the ground and passed on to the cockpit pilots. And there it's communicated via ACARS, which is a system that brings a telex to the cockpit crew. So that I'm aware of, and I know that our cockpit crew is very much motivated to work on this. And to give you an example, our cockpit crew members who are flying not too much in the past year, they have created a group, a think tank of pilots who have set an ambition to reduce our fuel consumption with 1% in this year on a relative basis. And that's a huge amount. That's a huge amount. And they are sharing all their knowledge and are engaged to the subject so much. And they've achieved indeed this 1% by sharing all the knowledge. So that's what I know from the cockpit.
Thank you so much, Karel. And great question, Tina. Keep those questions coming. We're gonna, I wanna say stop the Q&A just for now and just continue the conversation, but do save those questions for later and make sure to use that chat box on your right-hand side of your screen. So let's throw it over to Vincent. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Air France-KLM is doing in order to achieve its sustainability goals?
Sure, Carla, with pleasure. So I already mentioned while answering the question on innovative actions about everything we do on reducing immediately our carbon footprint, also in replacing fossil fuels by SAF, by sustainable aviation fuels, with a huge upside in terms of CO2 emissions reduction that it represents. The last part of our current strategy is around offsetting. And the logic is that our biggest priority is once again to reduce as much as we can immediately. But what we cannot eliminate yet, the emissions that we cannot reduce yet, we still want to have an effort on them, an impact on them, so we will offset part of them. What does it concretely mean? As you could see in the video, Air France decided in the beginning of 2020 to fully offset its domestic flights. So it's 100% of the emissions generated by our domestic flights that we counterbalance, that we neutralize through especially reforestation projects. But this commitment and this compensation action, we want also to offer it to our customers. So while booking a trip on airfrance.com, at the end of your booking flow, you can donate to a reforestation project with the same logic of absorbing in the atmosphere an equivalent or part of the emissions generated by your flight. Knowing that, as you probably well know, a tree, while growing, will capture in the atmosphere and actually store CO2, which is present. And to give you a rough estimation, one tree during its life will capture around 100 kilos of CO2. So this possibility to offset and counterbalance the emissions generated by one tree, we also offer it to our corporate customers through a project called Vishada in Colombia, which is a reforestation project certified with the highest standards. Because of course the quality of the project we choose is absolutely important to ensure that the impact is real in terms of carbon capture and sequestration. And I want also to mention that we are not only active in terms of climate and reducing our CO2 emissions, we are also driving as much as we can circular economy, recycling, withdrawal of single-use plastic, and here comes a great example of KLM commitment in this field.
How sustainable is our waste and recycling process? We are well on our way towards reducing the amount of waste. At KLM, 14 different kinds of waste are separated and recycled, such as cardboard, plastic, metal, glass, cans, and so on. But in addition to using traditional recycling methods, We're also working on other projects that add value to discarded KLM products and materials. By using old uniforms, our supplier Desso created carpeting for our cabin interiors. We've set ourselves a target for 2030 of reducing our residual waste by 50% compared to 2011. We intend to do this by producing less waste to begin with, and by increasing the portion that can be recycled. For instance, together with our suppliers, we've decreased the size and the design of the cardboard drawer, which reduces the amount of cardboard used. This is our journey to more sustainable aviation.
I like this video. As you've seen, our responsibility goes beyond climate. It's also about resources, about raw materials, and reducing our waste streams. And we're doing this by two ways. Coming back to what Vincent explained, one is to reduce. When we can avoid packaging, we will do so. And the other strategy is by replacement. If you can replace your packaging or your materials with a different kind of material that can be upcycled or recycled, we take that one. So wherever we can, we take the circular way. Now, Brian, coming back to your question, a nice recent example is that we had a flight from Amsterdam to Vancouver and back, and we actually recycled all the plastics from that flight that has been used on board, and we recycled all that plastic into in Vancouver. It was upcycled to the same equipment with the same materials used as the, let's say, the plates and the cups, etc. And that actually worked. It was extremely expensive, but at least we've proven that circularity is the way to go. There's one example that I really think is the perfect example of circularity. And actually that's a first in aviation. I'm talking about circularity of fuel. We can produce fuel from CO2 from the air, and also combined with hydrogen from sustainable electrical power. So then what then actually happens is that all the CO2 from the exhaust of the aircraft is being subtracted from the air with carbon capture, and then via a chemical process being recycled or upcycled to jet fuel. So then actually you have closed the loop of exhaust emissions towards new jet fuel. We call that synthetic fuel. And synthetic fuel is let's say a first. And I'm very proud that at KLM we have actually executed the first ever flight on synthetic fuel just 2 months ago from Amsterdam to Madrid. It was just a small batch of synthetic fuel because it's still expensive and complex to do it. But at the same time, it's a giant example for the industry. And there's a little video that shows how this works.
This is a drop of the future. Yes, it's small, but as we know from the past, small steps can lead to giant leaps. This is a drop of synthetic fuel, and it's about to make history. Synthetic fuel is not new. We have been producing it with the help of fossil resources. Now we can present a revolutionary step. We've made a 500-litre batch of commercial-grade synthetic aviation fuel with CO2, renewable power and water. And we have actually let a passenger plane fly with it, the first worldwide. We all agree that the aviation industry needs to become more sustainable, but it has to reduce its impact on the environment. Sustainable aviation fuels will be part of the answer.
Oh, it's me. Hi, guys. So we've touched on synthetic fuels. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit about that. I know the buzzword right now in the sustainability world is SAF. What is SAF exactly? So Marion, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Hi, and happy Earth Day. And thanks for the question. I think when it comes to that question, it's another acronym, and I think it's worth a few explanations. So as Carol and Vincent mentioned, SAF stands for Sustainable Aviation Fuel. It's a fuel for aviation with an alternative feedstock to crude oil. So it means that raw material from which fuels are produced. So you may have heard words such as biofuels, alternative fuels, and first, I think it's important to remember that something made from organic raw materials doesn't necessarily imply that it's sustainable. At Air France-KLM, we do believe that the term sustainable aviation fuel definitely better describes the alternative we use instead of fossil fuel, as the SAF, so the sustainable aviation fuel that we source, is truly sustainable through certification and standard. And we make sure important points are respected, such as none of the projects lead to deforestation, for example. So the term biofuel generally refers to fuels produced from biomass, such as plants. But we saw in the short video that SAF also include alternative fuels, such as synthetic kerosene. And for instance, they're made of CO2, now you know, renewable energy and water. And there is also sustainable fuels made from other non-organic sources, such as waste streams, for example. So as you can see, feedstock for SAF can be multiple, ranging from cooking oil, plant oil, municipal waste, waste gases, and of course, agricultural residue. So just to name a few. So it goes beyond just biomass, and that's for that reason the term sustainable aviation fuel is more appropriate. I hope it answers your question, Carla.
Thank you so much, Marion. So I think for now, we're going to throw it back to the audience, see if we have any questions from our guests that we can answer. Let's see if we have one from Rhonda. Rhonda, how are you? She asks, will there also be action to reduce plastic? I think let's throw this one to Vincent, yes?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you, Rhonda, for this great question. And the answer is yes, both on Air France and KLM side. Talking more specifically on Air France side, we declared war to plastic, to single-use plastic, if I may say, back at the end of 2019, where we decided to implement an ambitious plan to withdraw all the single-use plastic on board. To give you a number, it represents 1,300 tons of plastic spared per year. So that's very significant. A bit unfortunately, but of course for obvious reason, we had to reintroduce plastic during the COVID crisis in order, of course, for sanitary reasons. But we are taking back our deployment of single-use plastic withdrawal. So it's really at the core of our approach.
Thanks, Vincent, and hopefully that answers Rhonda's question, and I'm sure that one is on a lot of people's minds as well. Let's see if we have another question from the audience. Brian again. Brian gets an A+ today. Brian asks, are KLM and Air France's programs the same or different, like the KLM example of recycling uniforms? Good question. Karel.
Yeah. Well, of course, we have our own operations because we're two airlines. And for example, the recycling of uniforms was initiated when KLM introduced a new uniform for the ladies' uniform. So that implied a huge pile of textiles at a certain moment. So we started this, and we're now reusing that. And we're learning from Air France from their specifics as well. So whenever one of our airlines has, let's say, a starting point on inventing something new, then they start it up, and whenever possible, we copy it to the other airlines. Learning in two sides, and best of both worlds.
Thank you so much, Karel. So I think for now we are finished with our Q&A portion. If you guys have any other unanswered questions, please feel free to still submit them, but email them to us at mail.info.usa@airfranceklm.com, and that link should be dropped on the right-hand side of your screen. So go ahead and submit those questions there, and we'll do our very best to get back to you. All right, so for now, let's throw it over to Marion. Marion, can you tell us, we all obviously recognize our role in reducing our carbon footprint, can you tell us what role Air France-KLM plays in doing that?
Thanks, Carla. So that's a good question. And indeed, we believe that in the US, environmental aspects are also a key priority. And I think we share today a lot of great insight. But sustainability is definitely a serious, broader topic. We're recognized by our peers on that. And we have seen an acceleration, I would say, the past year, not to say years, in terms of achievement and commitments, program, or new initiative. The good news is that we have now some dedicated teams in North America and more specifically in the US focusing on sustainability. And we are actually the first markets within Air France-KLM to have a fully dedicated resources. And we will continue to work very hard with our peers and stakeholders all together to reach our common industry goals when it comes to sustainability. And one of them that Vincent mentioned earlier is the target of minus 50% of CO2 emission by 2050 compared to 2005. And we're not going to be able to reach that alone. So that's the good news, is we're ready to tackle the challenge.
Thanks so much, Marion. And thank you for joining us from Canada. And I didn't mention earlier, but Vincent joined us from Paris as well, so thank you. So I know how passionate you are about sustainability in and outside of work, Marion, and your colleague Stacy shares that passion as well, and I know she's very excited to join us. But I want to see if we have any poll results from the poll question that we just threw up. Let's see if that's ready. Let's see if technology is on my side. If it's not quite ready, I can come back to it. Okay, we'll come back to it. All right, so we asked you guys earlier what sustainability in your eyes means to an airline. Stacy, can you explain what sustainability means to you?
So what it means to me and the US, I can say, so hold on a second. Can you guys hear me? We're good, right? So today is Earth Day, and this year's theme is Restore the Earth. And we hope you've seen how we're taking the initiative to continue to contribute to this determination. So here in the US, and for me, it's really important that we energize these efforts and motivate everyone along the sustainability journey. So whether through sustainable business travel, to advocating for equitable rights, to encouraging responsible eating. These actions are part of mine and all of our colleagues' DNA and the human footprint that we share with our partners and our customers. So it'd be great to see how this plays out in flight.
My name is Paul Testere, and I'm Executive Vice President In-Flight Services of KLM. KLM's ambition is to continue to distinguish itself in sustainability. We choose products which not only have the smallest possible environmental impact, but promote fair trade and are sourced responsibly. A few examples. The bread we serve is baked by Karl Siegert. This bakery uses solar power, organic grains and sustainable palm oil to produce organic bread products. The grain mills use wind power. This makes Karl Siegert one of the country's top 5 companies with a circular energy and production loop. The eggs we serve are from Rondale. Here, chickens live as they do naturally. They can forage, take a dust bath, and find a quiet spot to rest and lay their eggs. Rondale chickens are given balanced feed, which is 50% grain. The soya in the feed is sustainably produced. KLM invests the funds raised for CO2 reduction in a project for planting tropical forest in Panama. In cooperation with Forest Finest, a sustainable cacao plantation has also been established in the reforestation area at Bocas del Toro.
So Paul's work is reaching far and beyond, and we're so thankful to him and to our teams for helping us to measure our environmental impact through our diets. And this is considered our food print. So I know we've been referring to a lot of prints today, but seriously, it is a real term. And for this year's Earth Day, there's an effort called Food Prints for the Future. And we'll place a link in the chat for you to learn more a little bit about that if you want to get involved. But individually, if we adopt more plant-based eating in our diet, and I'm proud to say I'm one of those people, we can actually reduce the negative impact on climate change. So I'm really excited to let everyone know that we've just begun to explore some responsible catering options to reduce our footprint. And we're doing that through incorporating Beyond Meat in our new menus for US flights. So if you think about the happy chickens that we just saw, hey, it's a collective effort. And along these lines, when it comes to waste reduction and recycling, all Air France flights arriving to Paris from the US, recycling is done on some key items like cans and plastic bottles. And but I don't need to tell you about that. We can actually take a look at this process together.
Air France and its staff are developing the concept of selective waste sorting on all flights to Paris. This means that every year 60 million items will gradually be given a new lease of life. Our cabin crews sort plastic bottles, glass bottles, juice cartons and aluminum cans on a daily basis on all our short, medium and long-haul flights to Paris. This sorted waste is then recycled and reused. All other waste is incinerated in line with health standards and then transformed into energy to heat homes in France.
Nous séparons les déchets lors du débarrassage et mettons de côté les bouteilles en plastique, les canettes en alu et les briques de jus de fruits. Au lieu de les jeter à la poubelle, nous les conservons et rangeons dans des tiroirs de trolleys spécifiques. Ensuite, on dispose d'une étiquette pour que Serveur puisse reconnaître ces trolleys en tri sélectif.
Once it's been sorted by our colleagues, the waste is handled by Serveur, our leading air catering service provider. The waste is then recycled in various sectors in France and Europe, in steel mills, plastic factories and paper mills. At Air France, our ambition is to offer everyone, both current and future generations, a responsible travel experience. This is why we are committed on a daily basis to taking concrete measures.
En tant que PNC, je suis ravi de participer à cette démarche de gestion de nos déchets à bord. Ce sont des gestes simples qui font toute la différence.
For the love of travel, we are rethinking the way we fly the world.
So I want to share with you that each year globally, we recycle 5 tons of waste thanks to this program. 5 tons. So let's keep this going. And Carla, you asked me what sustainability means to me. I believe, and we believe as an organization, together with our colleagues, our partners, you, our vendors and customers, that we can all be drivers of transformative social and environmental change in communities around the world. So here in the US, we want to share our sustainability journey with you, but we've really just begun. And so we ask you to stay tuned because we have some more exciting initiatives coming this year, and we can't wait to share that with you.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for sharing what Air France-KLM is doing on the US perspective. And I have the poll results ready. So it actually just sort of goes along with the videos that we just saw and what the content from all of the speakers. But what sustainability means to the majority of our audience, nearly 50% is reducing waste. So 5 tons is a big number, and that's just on the Air France side. So like you said, Stacy, let's keep it going. So that marks the end of today's panel discussion. I want to thank all of our speakers. You guys have been incredible, and can't wait to see how Air France-KLM continues its journey on sustainability. Stephane, any last words?
Thank you guys. It was really amazingly concrete and tangible. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Stacy, for setting this up. If you allow me to just wrap it up, I would say we've done a lot, but the climate urgency, it's really now, and we have like 10 years to solve it. Not to travel less, but clearly to travel perfectly clean. Second, this is also a collective ambition. We are not building aircraft. We are not producing fuel. We are part of a chain. And our clients, individual, corporate, our partners, our travel agent are part of it too. And we are all in it together. And I would say even to conclude that you should stay tuned and be on the lookout for an upcoming Air France-KLM sustainable aviation fuel program for the US market. embedded in our contracts, and it's currently cooking in partnership with our close partner Delta Airlines, and it's coming soon. So thank you all, and have a great Earth Day.